In this video, we will see how we can add this settings section, okay? And as you can see, from this settings section, we are able to set the number of questions, okay? And we are also able to set the quiz direction, okay? So let me show you how it works. So if, for example, here, I set the number of questions to 10, okay? And here for the quiz direction, we can set it to 15, okay? So this one 10 and this quiz direction 15. So if I come here and for example I want to play this love quiz, as you can see for the timer is set to 15 minutes, okay? And here for the number of questions you can see that is set to 10, okay? So let's see first of all how we can build the UI, okay? And later on we will see how we can implement the logic, okay? So let me put this guy here, okay? And if we come back to our project, what we want to do, we want to come into this views folder, okay? And we want to come inside this settings folder. And what we want to do, we want to create a new folder, okay? So yeah, we can do a right click and we want to create a new group. And the name of our group is going to be profile. And now inside this profile, what we want to do, we actually want to take this profile image view, okay? And we want to put it inside this profile folder, okay? And now what we can even do, we can also create another folder for this stats, okay? So let's go ahead and do so. So here we want to do a right click and we want to create a new group. And for the name of our group, we want to call it stats, okay? And now what we want to do, we want to take this folder, okay, or this file, this one too, and we also want to take this and we want to put this inside this stats folder, okay? And this will help us to have like a clear view of our project, okay? Because we want to write our code as a senior developer, okay? So in order to do so, what we want to do, we want to make sure that each file is into the right folder, okay? So with that said, what we want to do now, we want to come inside this profile folder and we want to create a new file, okay, or a new view, okay? So here right click and we want to create a new file, and here is going to be a SwiftUI view, and for the name we can call it settings card view. Okay, now inside this settings card view, let me first of all maybe collapse this, okay, so that you guys can see better. And now inside this settings card view, what we want to do, we want to first and foremost think about this, okay? The first thing we need like a V stack, okay? And inside this V stack, we need this title, we need this, okay? We need this divider, and we need this title again, and we need this again, okay? And then we have to build our card view, okay? So let's do that step by step. So here we can remove this text, and as we said, what we want a V stack. And now inside this V stack, the first thing we need the title or subtitle. So here is going to be a text, and here for the title, what we want this number of questions. And now we can style our title. So the first thing we want to add a font. We also want to add a padding. And the last thing we want to do, we also want to add a padding, but this time we don't want the padding at the top. We want an horizontal padding. Okay, perfect. And now the next thing we want this number selection view, okay? So we want this view, okay? But for now, what we want to do, we can simply put this here. So here, what we want to create this number selection view. And after this, we need a divider. And after a divider, the next thing we want another title, okay, or subtitle. So what we can do, we can simply copy this and paste it down here. And here, of course, we need to change the title. So here, instead of number of questions, what we want this quiz direction. Okay, perfect. And after this title, what we want this number selection view, okay? So we can simply put our comment here, okay? So now that we have this is the content. What we should work on, this card view, okay? So let's go ahead and work on this card view. So yeah, we can toggle this V stack, and what we want to do, we want to play with this V stack, okay? So let's go ahead and add a frame, and here we want to specify the max width, and it's going to be infinity, and we also want to specify the max height, and it's going to be 300, okay? Now the next thing we want to do, we want to add the padding. So here, that padding. Then we want to add the background, and here remember we want to support the dark mode, okay? For example, if here I set this up to the dark mode, so let's go ahead and set this to dark mode. as you can see, this background will change. Okay, so what we actually need to do, we need to come to this asset. Okay, and you guys remember that we have this white surface. Okay, so what we want to do, we want to use this white surface. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this, and we want to go back to our settings card view. And what we want to do inside this background, what we need to do, we need to set the color. Okay, so here for color, we simply need to call white surface. Okay, and now the next thing we want to do, we want to add a corner radius. So here, that corner radius, and the corner radius we want a corner radius of 15. And the last thing we want to add a shadow. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a shadow. Here the color we want the color gray. Okay, and we also want to specify the x-axis, and for x-axis it's going to be 0, and for the y-axis we want it to be 5. Okay, and normally we are supposed to see a beautiful card view. Okay, so let me maybe zoom in here. Okay, so that you guys can see better. Okay, and just for the sake of testing, what we can even do, we can add another padding here, and as you can see, we have a nice card view. Okay, exactly as our finished app. Okay, so now let's go back to this vista, and what we want to do, we want to actually create this view. Okay, because this view is going to be this guy. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this. So we can come down here. Okay, and what we want to do, we want to create a new struct. Okay, so struct, for the name of course, is going to be number selection view, and we want it to return a view. And now inside this view, let's think about this number selection. So here what we want something that is scrollable. Okay, so that's the first thing. So if you notice here, this is scrollable. Okay, and we also want to be able to pick a selection. Okay, and anytime we tap on something, we first of all want this to be bigger. Okay, and we also want the selection, the current selection, to come at the center. Okay, because as you can see, if I select this, it will come at the center, but this one, because it's the last one, it does not come at the center. Okay, but if for example I select this guy, as you can see, it will scroll to the center. Okay, so we have a couple things to do here. So let's start with the scroll view. Okay, so as we said, we want this to be scrollable, so let's go ahead and add a scroll view. And we want our scroll view to be scrollable on the horizontal axis. Okay, now inside the scroll view, what we want to add an age stack. Okay, because as you can see, we have this set of questions. Okay, or set of numbers. Okay, so yeah, what we want to add an age stack. And now inside this age tag, what we want to do, we want to actually add this text. Okay, so let's go ahead and create each element of this text. Okay, so here is going to be text, and for now we can simply put this 10. Okay, just for testing. And now we want to style this text. Okay, so here we are going to add a font, also want to add a font weight. Then we want to add 2 padding. Okay, so let's go ahead and do so. So padding, the first padding, we want it to be on the horizontal axis. The second one, we want it to be on the vertical axis, and we want to set it to 4. Okay, and I think for now we should be okay. And right now we are not able to see this. Okay, so what we can do, we can actually come here and copy this, and what we want to do here, we want to paste this. Okay, and we want to do the same thing here. So let's go ahead and paste it here. And now as you can see, we are able to actually see what we are working on. Okay, and before we can keep working on this number selection view, what we can do here on this vista, what we can do, we can add an alignment. Okay, so let's go ahead and do so. So here, alignment, and we want this alignment to be at the center. And the reason why we are adding this center is because we want this to be center. Okay, and we also want to add some spacing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do so. So here, spacing, and we want to space it by 20. Okay, just to have like more space between these items. Okay, so now let's go ahead and keep working on this number selection view. Okay, and yeah, what we can do, we can add the set of selection. Okay, because as you can see here, we have a range of selection from 5, okay, to just 25. Okay, so what we want to do, we want to actually specify that every time that we create this number selection view, what we want to pass this set of selection. Okay, so let's go ahead and do so. So yeah, before this body, what we can do, we can add our selection value, and here is going to be an array of integer. And now, of course, we have an error, okay, because now we need to provide this set of array, okay. So just for the sake of testing, for now, let's comment out this, okay, and we can only work on this guy, okay. So now let's pass this argument. So as you can see, we have this missing argument error. So if we hit on this fix, and now we need to provide an array of integer, okay. So we can simply provide this array, okay. So as we said, we want an array from 5 to 25, okay. Now let's go back to this view and let's keep working on this guy, okay. And what we want to do inside this age tag, we want to create a for each, okay. So here we want to say that, okay, for each element of this selection values, okay. So what we can do, we can copy this and paste it here. So for each element, okay, of this selection values, what we want to do, we want to display this, okay. So let's go ahead and finish off for each. So for each selection values that indexes, and here for the id, what we can simply do, we can provide this self. And now what we want to get the index, okay. So for each index of these selection values, what we want you to do, we want you to display this text, okay. So we can cut this and put this inside for each, okay. So for each element of this guy, we can display this text, okay. And as you can see, we have the corresponding element, okay, or set of elements we have inside this selection values, okay. But we don't want to always display this 10, okay. What we want to do, we want to display the value, okay. And how can we get the value? Well, in order to get the value, we can simply copy this, okay. And here, instead of hard coding this guy, what we want to do, we simply want to say that, okay, from this array, get me the index, okay, this index, okay. So for each index, simply get me the index and then you can provide the value, okay. And here we have an error simply because this is an integer, okay. Before we can even fix this, what we can actually do, instead of having this code here, okay, so what we can do, we can create a view for this code, okay. So let's go ahead and do so. So here we want to create a new struct and we will call it number item view. And here we need a body. And now inside this body, what we want to do, we simply want to cut this, okay, and paste it inside this body, okay. And now we can simply copy this and paste it here, okay. And normally we are supposed to have the same result, okay. Okay, perfect. And now that we have this into a separate view, so what we can do, we can actually say that, okay, every time we create this number item view, what we need to actually get the value, okay. So we need to get this value, okay. And because we know this value is an integer, we can specify the type as integer, okay. And now, in order to display this integer, what we can simply do, we can get this value, okay, and put this inside this parenthesis, okay. So we can simply copy this value and put it inside this bracket, okay. So this is simply the way, okay, that we can use in order to display this integer, okay. And now, as you can see, now we have an error, okay, because we need to provide this value, okay. So let's go ahead and do so. And as we said, what we want to do, we simply want to get these selection values and we want to get the corresponding index, okay. And normally with this, we are supposed to actually see a value, but here we still have an error, okay, simply because we forgot to add this value, okay. So let's hit on this fix. Now we are supposed to see our values, okay. And as you can see, we are able to see the values that we pass up here, okay. So now what we want to do, we want to work on this view itself, okay, because as you can see, it does not look as a finished app, okay. First of all, for a finished app, this selection range is smaller than this one, okay, and we only display 3 numbers at the same time, okay. So let's go ahead and fix that. So we want to work on this guy, okay. We want to style this selection view, okay. So let's go ahead and inside this age tag, okay, or after this age tag, what we want to do, we want to set a frame, okay. So let's go ahead and do so. So that frame, and here we want to specify the height. And for us, it's going to be a height of 40, okay. And now on this scroll view, okay, so we can toggle this scroll view. So on this scroll view, what we want to add a padding. We also want to add a background color. And here for background color, we will pick this black color, okay. And we also set the opacity to 0.8. Next, we want to set the corner radius, and we want to set it to 25. And we also want to set the frame. And for a frame, for the width, it's going to be 200, and for the height, it's going to be 70. And the last thing we want to add this shadow, okay? And normally we are supposed to be good to go, okay, for this guy, okay? But as you can see, we are not able to see selection items, okay? So let's go back on this number item view. And what we want to do, we want to set a foreground color, okay? So let's go ahead and set that. So foreground color. And here the color we want this white color, okay? And normally now we are able to see our selection items, okay? And as you can see, it's looking good, okay? We are able to actually scroll this, okay? But now what we want to do, we want to be able to select something, okay? Because on our finish app, as you can see, we're able to select a value, okay? So this one is scrollable, but we are also able to select a value, okay? But right now, we are not able to select anything, okay? And we also want to show the difference between the item selected, okay, or the number of questions selected that has been selected and the other one, okay? Because as you can see, yeah, when we select something, this one we get bigger than the other one, okay? So let's go ahead and do so. So let's add the logic for selection, okay? And in order to add that logic, the first thing we want to do, we want to come on this number item view. And what we want to do, we also want to add this is selected, okay? Because we need to know if an item is selected or not, okay? So let's go ahead and add that is selected, and it's gonna to be Boolean. And as we said, every time we select something, okay, we want to make that selection bigger than the other one, okay? So yeah, after this padding, what we can do, we can add this scale effect. And inside this scale effect, what we want to do, we want to specify that, okay, if this is selected, okay, we want this to be scaled to 1.7, okay? But if it's not selected, what we want to do, we simply want to have this one, which is the normal effect, okay? So as I said, we added this on is selected, okay? Just because we want to know, okay, when something is selected or not, okay? And every time this is selected, what we want to scale this to 1.7, okay? And of course, you can play with these values, okay? Because if you want something bigger or maybe something smaller than this, you can of course change this value, okay? And the next thing we want to do, we also want to change this color just a little bit, just the opacity when something is selected, okay? So what we can do, we can actually copy this, and we want to say that, okay, when this is selected, the value we want is this white, okay? But when this is not selected, we still want this white color, okay, but we want this with an opacity of 0.7. Okay, perfect. And now, as you might have guessed, we are supposed to have this error, okay? So let's see, because now we need to specify if this number of items is selected or not, okay? So let's hit on this fix. And yeah, in order for us to know which item has been selected or not, what we need to actually create a state variable, okay? So yeah, normally we are supposed to create a state, okay? But we will create a binding variable instead, okay? And I'll explain why in a minute, okay? So let's go ahead and create this binding. And yeah, we will call it selected index. And now we can specify that this is selected is true only when this selected index, okay, is equal to this index, okay? And now normally we are also supposed to have an error here, okay, because now we need to provide this selected index here, okay? So let's go ahead and fix this error. So on this settings card view, now here we need to create a state, okay? So let's go ahead and do so. So states, and for the name of our variable, we still want this selected index. So we can actually copy this, okay? And here, we can paste it here, and we can give it a default value of 1, okay? So now what we want to do, here, we want to pass this state, okay, to this view, okay? So let's go ahead and do so. So if we hit here on this button, and we want to fix this error, and here the value we want to simply pass this selected index, okay? And here, before we can keep going with our code, let me explain why here I created this state variable, okay, but here I just created this binding, okay? So basically, this bounding means that, okay, the value we have here is bound to our parent view, okay? So the state of this value will be bound to this settings card view, okay? And the reason why we want our logic to be handled here, up here, is simply because later on we will add a view model, okay? And when we will add a view model to this settings card view, everything will make sense, okay? Simply because once we have the view model, we can actually change or update this value, okay, without changing anything from this selection view, okay? Because what we want this number selection view to be independent, okay? So every time we change the state here, okay, we simply want that change to be reflected inside this number selection view, okay? And if what I just said doesn't make any sense right now, okay, don't worry. When we will start adding a view model, okay, we can come back on this and explain this again, okay? And let me explain again what we just did, okay? So what we did, we needed a way to know if an item is selected or not, okay? So that's the reason why we first of all added this is selected here, okay? So now, because we have this is selected, we are actually able to play with this value, okay? So the first thing we did, we added this scale effect, okay? Because when something is selected, as you can see, we want the selected value to be bigger than the other one, okay? And we also want to play with the foreground style, okay? Because when we select something, we want this to be white, okay? And when an item is not selected, okay, we still want this white, but we want this white with this opacity, an opacity of 0.7, okay, which will make it darker than the selected one, okay? And now, inside this number selection view, what we actually want to do, we want to say that, okay, for this for each, okay, when this selected index is equal to the actual index, and remember we set the actual index to 1, okay, so it will start with this 0 and then 1, okay, so when this selected index is equal to this index, okay, so we will come here for the first index will be 0, okay, 0 is not equal to 1, okay, so this one is not selected, okay, and then we will go to the 1, okay, index 1, okay, and as we said, we provided this 1, we hard coded this 1, okay, and now 1 is equal to 1, okay, so this 10, because it's the second, okay, or the item index 1, okay, this one will be selected, okay, and now because this is selected, this guy is going to be bigger, and also as we said, we want the color contrast to be lighter, okay. Okay, with that said, I think the next thing we want to do, we want to be able to modify our selection, okay? Because as you can see right now, nothing is clickable, okay? But on a finish app, if for example I tap on this 15, okay, as you can see, it will update the selection, okay? So how can we accomplish this? Well, in order to accomplish this, what we want to do, we want to come on this number item view, and what we want to do, we want to add this on tab gesture. And every time we tap on something, what we want to update this selected index, okay? And we want to update it with the current index, okay? So normally with this code, if we tap on something, it's supposed to set that value to the selected index, okay? So let's go ahead and do so. So if we tap on this 15, and as you can see, this 15 will get bigger, okay? So if I tap on this 20, as you can see, the current selection will be 20 now, okay? So we successfully added this tab, okay? Now, as we can see, this one is a little bit rough, okay? Because as you can see, when we tap on something, it doesn't look nice, okay? So how can we fix this? Well, the first thing we can do, yeah, on this tab gesture, what we want to do, we want to add this with animation, and the animation is going to use here is this is in out. And now we simply want to put this code, okay, this change, we want to put this inside this with animation. Okay, perfect. And it's supposed to add this nice animation, as you can see, okay. Now when we tap on something, we have this nice animation, okay, which is kind of cool, okay. Now the next thing we want to do, we want to actually scroll to the selected item, okay, because as I said before, when we tap on this 20, for example, as you can see, it will scroll by itself to the center, okay. So let me show you again. If I tap on this 15, as you can see, we scroll to the center, okay. So let's go ahead and add this scrollable animation. So what we can do after this shadow, okay, what we want to do, we want to add this on change. and it's going to be on change of this selected index. Okay, so every time this selected index changes, okay, what we want to do, first of all, we want to get two things. We want to get the old index, even though we won't use this, and the new index. And now every time that this selected index changes, what we want to do, we want to scroll to the new index. Okay, and in order for us to add this scroll, what we can do on this scroll view, what we can do, okay, we can create something called scroll view reader. Okay, and the reason why we are adding this scroll view reader is simply because we want to get this scroll view. Okay, and now with this scroll view, okay, we'll be able to actually scroll to a specific index. Okay, and put it inside this scroll view reader. Okay, and oops, here we have an error, and I think it's because here is supposed to be lowercase scroll view. Okay, perfect. So now that we are inside this scroll view reader, what we can actually do, here we can use this scroll view. Okay, and we can actually scroll to a specific index. Okay, as you can see. Okay, so here we have two initializer. Okay, we have one with this id, and we have another one with this id anchor. Okay, so here this id is simply the new index. Okay, so this is where we want to scroll to. Okay, so we can copy this and put it here. We want to scroll to this new index. Okay, and here for this anchor, what we want it to be center. Okay, and normally with this code, if we tap again on this, normally it's supposed to scroll to the center. Okay, so let's test this. If I tap on this 15, and as you can see, it scroll to 15. Okay, and if I tap on this 20, as you can see, scroll to this 20. Okay, but again, this is off. Okay, what we want to add an animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and do so. So here we want to cut this guy, and we want to put it inside this animation. So it's going to be with animation, and we can paste this inside this with animation. Okay, and normally if I tap again on this, as you can see, we have this nice animation. Okay, perfect. And I think everything is looking fine. Okay, and everything is working. So I think the last thing we need to do, we need to add this on appear. Okay, so every time this view appear, what we want to do, we simply want to reuse this. Okay, so with animation and this whole view. Okay, and we want to paste it inside this on appear. Okay, and oops, I have an error simply because here it doesn't know what is this new index. Okay, so instead of this new index, what we want this selected index. Okay, so we can simply replace this with this selected index. Okay, and as I was saying, the reason why we add this on appear is simply because, so when we open this view, I don't know if you guys noticed, but if you pay attention, when we open, this one will scroll directly to the selected index. Okay, and if you don't add this, by default it will simply be like this. Okay, so let's say if this on 20, for example, is selected, okay, and you don't add this code, by default it will simply be like this. Okay, because it will start rendering with this 5. Okay, so when we open this view, what we want to scroll to the selected index. Okay, and again, if you pay attention, if you really pay attention, you can notice that it scrolls to the selected index. Okay, so that's the reason why we added this on appear. Okay, and now with that said, I think that's pretty much it for this video. So let's go ahead and simply copy this. Okay, because we need 2 instances of this guy, so we can remove this and simply paste it here. Okay, and as you can see, it's looking exactly as a finished app. Okay, we can scroll this. Okay, we can scroll this value, and we can select something. Okay, and when we select something, it will scroll automatically to the center. Okay, and now before we can wrap up with this video, what we can do, we can simply copy this guy, and what we want to do, we want to go back to profile view. And yeah, I just noticed that we don't have a profile view yet. Okay, we simply have this profile image view. Okay, which is wrong. Okay, because this profile image view is simply this view. Okay, but what we want to actually create a profile view. Okay, so let's do that. So inside this profile folder, what we want to do, we want to create a new view, and here is going to be a SwiftUI view, and of course we call it profile view. And now inside this profile view, we want this image view, and we also want this settings view. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we can remove this text, and we want it to be a V star. And here for the spacing, we want a spacing of 20. And inside this profile view, what we want, first of all, we need this profile view. So let's go ahead and copy this. So if we come back to this settings view, we want this profile view. So let's copy this. And here before this settings card view, we actually want this profile image view, okay? And between these two, as you can see, we need these settings, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to copy and paste what I have on the Finish app. And as you can see, we have this settings text, okay? So what we have here, we simply have this foreground color, okay? And we are using this on white surface, okay? And we also added this font, okay? So nothing crazy. And now what we can do, we can go back to this settings card view and we can remove this padding. And now if we go back on this profile view, what we can do, we can actually add this padding here instead. So padding, and here we want an horizontal padding. Okay, perfect. Now let's go back to our settings view, and here instead of this profile image view, what we want this profile view, okay? And as you can see, everything is looking good except for one thing, okay? Because on the Finish app, as you can see, we have more space here, okay? So let's go back to this profile view, and what we can do, we can add some spacer here. So what we want to do, we want to add this spacer 2 times and it will push this to the bottom, okay? So let's go back to the settings view and see how it looks like, okay? I think it's looking good, okay? But maybe we don't need this 2 spacer, so maybe we only need 1. So let's go ahead and see how it will look like. So let's go back to this settings view and it does not look as we want. So if we come back on this profile view, okay, maybe let's add another spacer here and 2 other ones at the top, okay? So let's see how it will look like. And I think this is looking much better, okay? So congratulations guys, I think we are done with this profile view, okay, except for this selection, okay, because right now this is not clickable, okay? But in the next video, I think we will start working on this guy, okay, because we want to finish our UI first and then we can add our logic, okay? So I hope you have enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.